The open house balloons bob on my mailbox like colorful taunts in the morning breeze. A stranger wearing shoe covers is casually sipping cucumber water in my kitchen, while another couple examines my granite countertops. A realtor in a navy blazer whispers to her clients about the great bones of the property. I set my grocery bag down on the marble counter I personally selected and paid for 3 years ago and say in a calm voice that those are actually my bones they're admiring. That's when Clarice Pennington, HOA president and self-appointed neighborhood empress, materializes in my doorway wearing her signature pearls and power blazer combination like armor. She shrieks loud enough for the entire cul-de-sac to hear that I cannot be here because this showing is for prospective buyers only. My name is Owen Whitaker and I've spent the last 15 years buying distressed properties and renovating them until they transform from neighborhood eyesores into homes people actually want to live in. I keep to myself mostly, the kind of quiet existence that makes neighbors assume you're a librarian or accountant rather than a contractor with permanent calluses and a deep appreciation for solitude. My house sits squarely in Birchidge Meadows, one of those subdivisions where the HOA newsletter gets treated like religious text and every trash can has a strict curfew for street placement. Clarice Pennington has run the board for 6 years with an iron fist wrapped in a velvet glove and a smile that comes with its own set of bylaws and subsections. We've had our differences over the years, though I mostly ignore her passive-aggressive emails about what she calls the unauthorized personality of my mailbox. Apparently painting it matte black instead of the approved glossy black constitutes a violation worthy of multiple certified letters. The harassment started small like it always does with people like Clarice. First came the violation notices for what she termed non-conforming curtains, even though they were actually blinds that met every specification in the community guidelines. Then she escalated to citing my unauthorized vegetation, which was nothing more than a rosemary bush I'd planted near my kitchen door for cooking. The vehicular blight notice made me laugh out loud since it referred to my work truck, which I wash every Sunday and keep cleaner than most people's personal vehicles. But Clarice wasn't satisfied with petty violations that I could easily contest. A notice arrived via certified mail claiming I owed $87.50 in late fees for assessments I had actually paid on time with receipts to prove it. The letter threatened imminent lien action if not resolved within 72 hours. Before I could even respond with my bank statements, another notice appeared taped to my door announcing emergency board action regarding my property. That's when things took a turn into the truly bizarre. I came home from a 3-day job renovating a bathroom in the next county to find a lockbox on my front door and a sign planted in my lawn reading Pennington Realty Group. Charming 3-bedroom 2-bath. Won't last long. Clarice was telling everyone who would listen that the HOA had successfully foreclosed on my property for unpaid fees and assessment violations. I was completely current on all payments and had the canceled checks to prove it. But the real kicker was when I managed to get inside my own home using the back door and found that someone had staged my living room. My grandmother's handmade quilt that had covered my couch for 2 years was gone, replaced with a beige throw that looked like someone had knitted disappointment itself. My personal photos were face down in a box labeled storage, and generic prints of seashells hung where my vintage concert posters used to be. The showings had apparently been going on for 2 days because my neighbor Sandra texted me screenshots of the online listing claiming the owner had relocated suddenly and was now a motivated seller. The photos showed my home but with furniture I didn't recognize mixed with my own belongings rearranged in ways that made no sense. They'd even photoshopped out my black mailbox and replaced it with a white one in the listing photos. I immediately drove to the county records office and pulled every document related to my property. What I found was exactly what I expected, which was absolutely nothing. No foreclosure filing, no trustee sale notice, no notice of default, not even a lien recorded against the property. What Clarice had done was create something she called a community vesting affidavit, which she had signed as HOA president and had notarized by someone whose stamp had expired in 2019. She'd been telling real estate agents that the HOA possessed statutory conveyance rights that allowed them to seize any home that endangered property values through repeated violations. No such law exists anywhere in our state. The comedy of errors reached its peak when Clarice called the non-emergency police line to report that a suspicious person who might be a squatter was removing mail from the property during an active showing. The officer arrived just as a young couple was touring the master bedroom with the listing agent gushing about the potential for appreciation in this highly sought-after neighborhood. I was standing in my own foyer holding my deed, property tax receipts from the last 5 years, and my phone showing the county property appraiser app with my parcel glowing in righteous blue indicating current ownership. Clarice waved her fabricated papers around like she was conducting an orchestra of lies, insisting her documents superseded mine because they were issued by the governing body of the community. The officer examined her community vesting affidavit, squinted at the expired notary stamp that was so faded you could barely read the date, and immediately radioed for a supervisor. The supervisor who arrived was a tall woman with 20 years of experience who asked exactly one question that changed everything. She looked directly at Clarice and asked who specifically gave her the authority to transfer title of this property. Clarice responded with complete confidence that the board had voted on it in executive session. The HOA treasurer, who had only shown up for the free cookies at the open house, suddenly started shaking his head so vigorously that his name tag flipped backwards. He stammered that there had been no such vote and he'd never seen any of these documents before today. The listing agent went pale as she realized she was standing in the middle of what could be a felony real estate fraud case. I handed the supervisor my folder that I had labeled for when people lose their minds, which contained my warranty deed, the lien release from the previous year when I'd paid off my mortgage early, and the HOA ledger showing a zero balance on my account printed and signed by their own management company just last week. The supervisor's entire demeanor shifted as she realized I was the victim here, not the perpetrator Clarice had described on the phone. She ordered the lockbox removed immediately and announced that the open house was officially closed due to an ongoing investigation. The prospective buyers and neighbors who had gathered to watch the drama unfold began shuffling out like guests leaving a wedding that had just been called off at the altar. The listing agent frantically made phone calls trying to explain to her broker why she needed to pull the listing immediately without admitting she hadn't verified ownership before taking it on. Clarice completely detonated at this point. She screamed that this neighborhood had standards and I had violated every single one of them with my matte black mailbox and my rosemary bush and my refusal to conform to the aesthetic harmony of Birchidge Meadows. Her voice climbed into frequencies that made the neighbor's dog start barking as the supervisor photographed her community vesting affidavit next to my granite countertop like it was evidence at a crime scene, which technically it was. She kept insisting that I couldn't prove I actually lived here despite the fact that I was literally holding mail addressed to me at this address. I calmly walked to the alarm keypad and entered my code, causing it to chirp my name in its electronic voice. I opened the pantry and showed them the cereal that only a single man with no children would buy, the protein powder on the counter, and the work boots by the door caked with yesterday's drywall dust. The detective from the property crimes unit arrived within the hour because forged notarizations trigger an automatic alert in their system. He started asking Clarice about emails she'd sent to the title company where she'd apparently been posing as the HOA conveyance director, a position that doesn't exist in any legitimate organization. Her story shifted from claiming she had board approval to saying she was protecting property values to finally admitting she thought I was ruining the neighborhood with my nonconformist choices. The detective pulled up her emails on his tablet where she'd sent falsified documents to multiple parties including real estate agents, the title company, and even a mortgage broker who had been pre-qualifying potential buyers for my property. What had started as Clarice being a motivated seller trying to help the community became her being an interviewee in a criminal investigation, then a suspect in multiple felonies, and finally a woman in handcuffs being guided down my freshly power-washed walkway toward a police cruiser. She argued with the basic laws of physics as she tried to resist being placed in the vehicle, shrieking that vinyl fences were destroying America and that my matte black mailbox was a gateway to neighborhood anarchy. The neighbors stood in their driveways recording everything on their phones, probably posting to the neighborhood social media page in real time. 3 months later, Clarice stood in front of a judge and pleaded guilty to attempted real estate fraud, filing a false instrument, and criminal impersonation. The prosecutor had emails, falsified documents, and testimony from the real estate agent who'd been duped into listing my property. The judge sentenced her to 3 years of probation, ordered her to pay $25,000 in restitution for my legal fees and the damage to my property's reputation, and mandated 500 hours of community service. Clarice's face turned the exact shade of burgundy as her power blazer when the judge added that she was permanently barred from serving on any HOA board in the state. She actually gasped when he announced the amount of the fine, her hand clutching her pearls as she swayed on her feet, mumbling something about property values as the bailiff escorted her out.